All right. Hi, everyone who is on or who will be joining us. We're right at the top of the hour, so I would like to thank you for tuning in to From Interest to Hire, How Performing TA Teams Convert the Right Talent at Scale. Presented by two of my favorite technologies in the space. I'm not just saying that because they're here, Dahlia and SquarePeg. So with that, if you don't know me, I'm Matt Sharney. I'll be leading the discussion today, and I'm the principal analyst in Kyle & Co. And I will let two other founders and panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with our guest, Claire. Hi, Claire.
Hey, thank you for having me here. So I am the founder of SquarePeg, and SquarePeg essentially helps with anything when it comes to recruiting in your entire funnel. So we look at once a candidate applies through when they're hired, we build sort of recruiting agents to help evaluate them, screen, and identify signal in the noise.
Awesome.
And my name is Sam. I am co-founder of Dahlia, and Dahlia is a candidate conversion platform. We convert candidates in a few different places, but our main focus is on the career site. So we help companies basically just get connected with a lot more of the people who visit their career site, but would normally leave without sharing information, and then help convert those interested candidates into applicants in the ATS. And recently, like most, sort of larger, higher volume companies have been using us to cut dependence on some paid media that doesn't really drive high quality. And so, yeah, we have lots of data on that, and excited to share some of that. Also, just talk about some of the things we see in the top of funnel conversion, like just basic missed opportunities, and what any employer could do to really increase conversion. So excited to be here today.
Sweet. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to let everyone know this is supposed to be interactive. You'll see some slides. We may talk to them, we may not. If you have a question, I will cut in. Feel free to ask it at any time. You can wait to the end, but you don't have to. Somebody's already typing. That's awesome. You can't see or hear anything.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Dan. That's the head recruiter from Manatech. So I don't know if that is a you problem or me problem. You guys can hear me though, right?
I can.
Okay. Michaela says yes. So we're good.
Yes.
This is live theater, people. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that, and I will I'll buy you a drink. So with that said, I just want to set the stage for where we're at in terms of talking about the capacity crunch. And Claire informs me these stats are actually low. But I kind of picked them off just from what we're seeing just longitudinally. So recent polls we did showed that essentially you're seeing 242 average applicants per rep, which if you're a recruiter, not a surprise. If you're a recruiter, you also know that you're doing more with less, which means that not only are you getting more applicants, you also have to deal with more reps at once. And that number just in the last few years has gone up by 56%. Since 2022. And in that same period of time, you've lost a quarter of your colleagues, unfortunately. So where we're at right now is this big problem where there's a lot of noise and very little signal, right? So with that, though, it could be a lot worse and it could be a lot better. Essentially, what we're seeing is that all these applicants are coming in, like we know a lot of them aren't great. We're paying for traffic we can't convert. There's some reasons for that, which we'll get into in much greater detail later. And then again, the one thing that I think we all kind of wanted to impart from this is that volume's great, but it doesn't equal value. And really what we need to get to is not only that one hire at the end, but hopefully a quality hire and really fast. So kind of want to just jump right into the Q&A. Again, everyone here will get my not so greatly designed slides, but again, I'm a writer, so I'm sorry. But Sam, I just want to ask, like, in terms of looking at this problem, like, what did you see that made you kind of like start Dahlia, right? Like, what was it that you were hearing from TA leaders in the market where you're like, candidate conversion is a problem? Just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty different market when I started Dahlia. So there was a candidate shortage at that time. especially as we headed into the pandemic. So we really got the business up and running early pandemic. And, after the first wave of reductions, everyone holding tight, then everything exploded and people were hiring like crazy. So at that time, companies just couldn't get enough candidates. They couldn't hire them faster. So the big thing that, we were trying to tackle was just low conversion rates on career sites. And really just from a usability standpoint, initially, it was like, if I'm on my phone and I'm visiting a company career site, like it's just hard for me to get into that employer's world, for them to know about me. My only option was really to apply to a job in most cases, or sign up for a talent community. And both of those things were very hard to do on mobile devices back then in 2020, 2021. They're still kind of hard to do today on phones. So the original reason was really just to kind of increase the employer's ability to get these candidates that they desperately needed. But then over time, we've kind of shifted how the product can deliver value. Now, as you mentioned, there's just an abundance of volume. And so now it's really about filtering down to the people who are the most qualified and also the most interested. So we found that people who apply from a career site are generally much more likely to be hired than people who are applying from external sources. So if we can increase the conversion rate of those people who are really interested, really focus on your brand, your jobs, and you get more of those candidates, and we also do some screening in between to make sure you get the right ones, that you just don't have to continue spending the mass amounts of dollars that most employers started spending in the pandemic and just have continued on sites like Indeed or other, job boards that are delivering candidates that may or may not be qualified, but those candidates are also applying to lots of other companies at the same time. And so you're just less likely to get their attention. So it's kind of shifted, but it started around like just volume and has, adapted to the current market.
Well, the volume, I think, is probably still the issue, just the different types. So that's awesome. Claire, talk to me about, obviously Sam's dealing with everything before point of hire. SquarePeg deals with after that. How did you come across this business problem you wanted to solve? Was there a single moment or data point that kind of you're like, all right, I'm gonna fix this?
Yeah, I think as we've seen the proliferation of tech tools and especially of AI tools in the recruiting market, what you've seen is just a lot of noise at the top of funnel. So you have mass application tools, which means, it started with LinkedIn Easy Apply, but now it's really proliferated. And so you have a lot of candidates without any intent applying to 1,000 jobs a day. They have AI rewriting their resume for every job. And so you have this movement of robo apply, which means you've lost any friction to apply to a job. And then you've got fraud that comes in. We see this a lot for tech companies hiring remote roles. And so you can have up to 25% of your applicants be fraudulent. And then you have, the difference between people who are, again, robo applying and then people who are genuinely interested in your company, have maybe applied before, have shown interest before. And so you have a lean team and you are looking at this problem of, how do I sift through hundreds of applicants, and I don't want to be spending my time manually reviewing documents for a bunch of people who are not real or have an AI generated resume. I really, as a recruiter, I just want to find the high signal group. I want to find 10 people that I can talk to that are qualified and relevant for the job. And I want to talk to them based on data that shows me that they are a good fit. So this is the problem that SquarePeg solved. We had built an early stage ATS before, and what we saw is all of these mid-market to enterprise companies coming in just saying, I need help with applicant evaluation. We're drowning is the word that everybody always says. I'm drowning, and my recruiters, what they got into this business to do is to evaluate candidates and to close candidates. And instead, what they're doing is reviewing thousands of resumes. And so that's the problem that we set out to solve. And I think, again, the AI arms race of how candidates have been using these tools, and we can talk about why they're using them. I think there's a lot of incentives for them because of how they get ghosted, but they're using these tools, and it's just creating a really big volume game. And I think in general with AI tooling, everything has gotten easier. And so the volume and the noise has gotten just increased a lot. And so products out there, part of your job is to help people get to the human stuff. how do you find signal and get to the human to human conversations? And so that's sort of a lot of what we see. And again, remote hiring, I think, has also played a part in this as well. So you just see the roles that we have, that are remote, that our customers, they're getting a few thousand applicants. And so it can get quite onerous.
Sure. And just, Sam, why is too many, like, I'm in marketing, right? So there's no such thing as a bad lead, as they would say. Why, if at all, is having too many applicants a bad thing? Like, help me get my head around that.
Yeah, I mean, to Claire's point, when it's not a real applicant or it's somebody who doesn't know that they're applying, then that's not a great applicant to have to deal with. It'll just like suck time. And we've seen an increase in bot activity ourselves at the very, very top of the funnel, where people are just connecting to share information. That has started to increase. And that's one of the reasons that we kind of adjusted our product very recently to put 2FA as the very first thing that you need to do. That's like a two-factor authentication. So instead of letting somebody just push information into a form to connect, now they have to verify they're human and real by validating a phone number with a short code. Surprisingly, it actually increased the conversion rate pretty dramatically. But yeah, like there's just a lot of activity, and if you're getting people who don't even know they're applying, or they're not even giving it much thought when they submit an application to you, then it just creates noise. It's more work. It's more time for the recruiting team. It can be wasted dollars if that's from a paid source. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to not have that kind of volume.
Absolutely. Great. So, and then Claire, before we wrap up this topic, just like a quick question. One of the things that you and I have discussed is, as much as recruiting's changed, it hasn't changed all that much, which is to say the job is still making a single hire correct at the end of the show. Longitudinal data tells me that most of the people who end up getting hired, about 90%, are either internal or referral based. How does that fit in into this world, knowing that they generally get a little bit more visibility?
Look, I think it's just, we're going through a messy period in recruiting, and I think everybody knows that. And when you can't make your traditional funnel work for you, where you've got a ton of people who are interested in your job, or just a ton of people of applying, you have a lot of noise, it's really hard to sift through, then you rely on, referrals or internal mobility or other things. I don't think that's the answer. I think in the long run, what you need to be able to do as a company is build a strong brand, attract people who are really interested in the type of work that your company is doing and are qualified, and have a way that you can find those people. You can get them, you can convert them, but you can find them immediately and get them into the right workflow. So maybe that means like a white glove treatment, a recruiter calls them right away if it is somebody that's landed in and is qualified. If that system doesn't work at your company, like you'll see things breaking for the entire funnel. And so what we've seen is, I've talked to companies that are very well-known brands, like very well-known companies that say, I don't review my inbound applicants, which is crazy. You have hundreds of thousands of people applying to these companies and they don't review the inbound. What you want is an inbound that works. So you want to be able to just optimize at every stage of the funnel for, how do I increase quality and increase signal, and how do I act right away? So how do I not ghost people that have, taken the effort to apply? How do I make sure that the people who are qualified are getting an answer right away? How, to Sam's point, am I making sure that people who have shown interest in my brand and my company are not abandoning? And so at every stage, like part of what the TA teams need to do is optimize those workflows for signal at every single stage. If you can't do that, again, the funnel is not going to work, and it's going to be really hard. And what's going to end up happening is you've got an overwhelmed recruiting team that's sort of drowning in resumes and drowning in unqualified applicants. And so I think the goal for all of us here is to make your inbound funnel work, because ultimately, like, yes, referrals are always going to be a great source, but you can't really scale a company on referrals alone, like maybe at the early stage. But if you're just hiring the friends of your employees, there are going to be a lot of inherent problems with that. And so I think looking for genuine growth and genuine diversity of hire and quality of hire, you're going to need to build an inbound funnel that works.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, I'd say almost every company we work with are in, like, I would say none of them are early stage. Many of them are high volume, and they definitely can't rely on referrals and internal alone. Like almost all of them have a pretty extensive like inbound engine, but various levels of efficiency. I would say like especially true in healthcare. If you're a healthcare system, you can't rely on, it's not just going to be referral and internal. Like you've got to hire from the outside. In fact, they really prioritize that in many cases because there's such a shortage of candidates. So we see that in healthcare, we see that in skilled trade for sure. Like that's another big area where you just have to have external pipeline. And then like the super high volume food service, hourly type roles, like there again, like the referral can only get you so far. So it depends on the industry and like the volume, but yeah, it's like a critical piece for most companies.
Right.
Cool. And I want to just take a step back, actually, Sam, remove that industry function sort of filter. Like you've talked to a lot of different companies and clients at this point in time. What mistake would you say that is the most easy to fix that just keep getting overlooked that shows up no matter who you're talking to?
I think in terms of like career sites, which is where we focus, I think the biggest one that's like very hard for any company to get out of is making everything email based. If you're hiring, at any volume, most people don't really engage with email. It sounds like a shocking thing to say because you've got to use an email address to apply to a job, right? But more and more people are using email less and less. It's like a requirement to have an email address to be able to do things, but people don't really use email to communicate, to look at things. I think that's why a lot of ghosting happens, is just like a very bad communication channel. So I think the more employers can shift everything they're doing, especially the top of the funnel, over to the mediums people use, which is like text for the most part, that's one. But that's not achievable because people can't just remove email tomorrow. But the other things that people could do for career sites, see you, Matt. Actually, is Matt still there? Maybe the window just moved over. But career sites, I think, just make sure you're looking at your career site on your phone, like in an actual mobile device, and you can just spot kind of weird things. Sometimes we'll see there's a button that covers up the apply button, or like there's a CAPTCHA privacy notification that has to be closed before anything else can be done on the career site. You might need that for compliance, but can you put it in a different spot? I would recommend just look at it on a phone, hold it in your hand, move around, use your thumb, and navigate, and you'll just things you can fix pretty quickly.
All right. And by the way, that was my theatrical candidate drop off.
And you came back to an echo now, Matt.
I hear two of you now, Matt. I don't know.
Let me try.
Well, yeah, maybe while you fix that, some of the things that we see, I would say, like one of the hardest things to get past is the keyword filter. And so again, in today's world, you have a lot of optimized resumes that are keyword stuffed. So recruiters, if there's anybody in TA that's listening on this, you might have seen a lot of these resumes where they have all the keywords from the job description, or they, it just looks generic. A lot of candidates, again, are using tools that will take keywords from a job description, put them in their resume, and then robo apply to jobs. And so what happens is, a recruiter who's using an ATS to just keyword filter and say, do you have this one skill, or do you have this one thing? It tends to, one, be that you miss out on a lot of your best applicants. And the second thing is it just doesn't give you signal. Like you're going to look for these things and find that everybody in your applicant pool has, these 5 keywords that you typically use to search for. And so we have just reached an area where you need more sophistication than keyword matching or than just basic Boolean. And so part of what we do on that is research. Like we research every company that every candidate has worked for, what that company did, how big it was, department size, growth, all of those things. And then we add that, and then you do really nuanced search. But again, the recruiter shouldn't have to be doing any of that manually. And so I would say like the flagship problem that we see is ATS has built keyword search. Recruiters use keyword search, and then Boolean misses a lot of really qualified people. And then the recruiters are looking at like, why do all these resumes look the same? And so again, I think like the sophistication of tooling has to match the market that we're in. And the market that we're in is where there's just not a lot of friction to just build, keyword stuffed resumes and mass apply.
So I think we all know like that's a problem. And I don't know if you're still doing Boolean strings, but good for you sourcers. I want to flip the question to you, Claire, just like a little bit. Hopefully I'm not still echoing. What problem do employers always tell you is an issue that you're like the data actually doesn't suggest as something you should be focused on?
I think the problem that we hear the most is I don't see qualified applicants from inbound. And that is generally not true. Like after we work with an employer, generally like the majority of their hires are coming from inbound. So I would say it is not being able to find the best people because of this world where you have the over-optimized resume. Data is very clear. Like people still want to apply to your career site and they still want to apply to your job. I don't think that's gone away. It's just gotten messier and noisier. And so candidates, I would say on the employer side, they feel that they can't find the right people in their applicant pool. And generally they are there. It's just with the ATS filters, it's very hard to find those people that are nuanced, have jagged edges, are not like a keyword optimized person. And then I would say on the candidate side, thinking that there's no point to applying on a career site because they'll never hear back. It's true. Like 1 out of 300 people often hear back for a job when they apply. We've got to stop this epidemic of ghosting on both sides, employers ghosting candidates, candidates ghosting employers. But I think genuinely, like if you've got a system that's set up and workflows that are set up, even to reject people who are not qualified right away, so at least you get a rejection right away, then you can make this work. So I would say that is probably the main thing. It's just not a recruiter not understanding how much quality is actually in their funnel when they first start, because all they see is the noise.
Right. Absolutely. Move on to the next one. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into this conversion process. So obviously these numbers, I believe they're mostly dollars. So the cost of an unconverted applicant is $400, which seems quite a lot. And that's mostly from wasted job board spend. But when you look at a recruiting budget, I think 60% of total TA budget is spent on talent attraction, primarily job advertising to point people to either your career site or your landing page. And also it's a really inefficient thing to spend, just given the fact that career sites overperform random job board conversions by about 3x. So with that said, I just want to like drill down on this theme a little bit. So Sam, employers have always spent so much money on job boards and sourcing channels, like basically getting Indeed to disintermediate their own Google search results, right? And then paying for the privilege. Mm-hmm. So with all that, like from what you've seen, how much of that would you say is effectively subsidizing a broken conversion process? And how much is getting through?
Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, like there's just a lot of overspend going on. I think once employers start tracking it accurately, like the basic things, and we could talk about like programmatic and job advertising, but the reality is 70% of all spend on job boards is Indeed. So it's kind of the only game in town, the only thing that really matters to most employers if they're trying to optimize anything. I think like the step one, just see what it is. Just track the difference between organic and sponsored. And there's a lot of employers spending a lot of money that do not track this difference. And I think back to like your other question about like what misconceptions, I think one of the things we hear a lot is like it's not possible to track those two things separately, or we can't get the data all the way through into our ATS and track it to hire. And usually that's just like a problem with the analytics, but not the data. It is possible with every single ATS on the planet to track from click to application to hire. It's absolutely possible. There's not a single ATS where you can't do that, but it does take configuration, setup, and that takes a little bit of time. But once you start measuring that, you know it, then you can kind of like, you pull the cover back and you say, okay, what are we really getting from sponsored versus organic on Indeed? And usually there's a huge difference between the quality of those two channels. And that'll at least let you start to drill down, okay, how can I kind of reduce, like, can I reduce the sponsored if it's not really driving hires? So we think like that's a big one, and a big opportunity. So there's a lot. I think for any employer right now who's not tracking the difference, has been spending the same amount month over month for over a year, I would imagine that they're probably overspending by at least 50%. We've seen that with so many of the companies we work with. After they've uncovered the data, optimized a few things on their better quality channels, they can cut that spend by 50% or more with no impact, except for the impact of recruiting teams in an initial panic with the volume drop, because that can kind of set off some fire alarms. But in terms of quality, you'll see an immediate lift because you're just going to drop so much of the low intent application flow.
Yeah, and on that note, I know quality of hires is like one of those very ambiguous that gets batted around. But I think that both of your cases, that's the proof of concept, right? Is you have higher quality applicants. So Claire, I'm just kind of curious. I'm making a case to the CFO, and I'm talking specifically down funnel, right? It's normally time to fill, cost per hire, transactional metrics. How do I say less is more? Help me make that case in business terms.
Did you hear that, Claire?
I think so. There's still two of you, Matt. So how do I make the argument that less is more? So again, what we are going to look at is you have your resource. So you've got your TA team and you've got your recruiters. You've got the man hours from those recruiters. That's one of your biggest spends. And then you've got your tooling. In our case, like LinkedIn is a really big one. People who have LinkedIn seats, that's, $15K per seat annually. It's quite expensive. Job wrapping is quite expensive. It does, like, all of your budget is getting spent at what Sam is talking about at the top of the funnel, when the problems that you experience on a day-to-day are actually like after that, it's actually like, how do you get to those quality people? And so again, what we are going to look at is when you track, like specifically to Sam's point, when you track the people that you are hiring, and more importantly, what your recruiters are doing, what are they spending time on? Where are they, drowning in their work? Where are they doing manual stuff? Where are they getting caught up? Then you can really build that ROI case. So at SquarePeg, what we really think about is how many applicants do you have to talk to, and how many did you have to view to be able to talk to them? And so let's say, as Zach said, 600 applicants. Okay, you've got 600 applicants. Now, let's say typically for your company, you want your recruiter doing a phone screen, maybe with just 10 of them, and then spending most of your time finding the two that are really highly qualified and convincing them that this is the job that you should take, even though you have a better offer somewhere else or something else. And so you think about, like, what do you want your recruiter time being spent on? And the nice thing about like AI tooling, as much as some people are skeptical of it, is it can take away the manual work. And so you can say, well, my lean team of recruiters, they're going to be spending time on more productive, useful human tasks. And it doesn't matter if the funnel went from here to here, or if the funnel went from here to here. What matters in the end is how long did it take you to hire somebody who's really high quality, and what were you burning cycles on? Was it, where were you misusing a lot of your time, and how can you think about in a future state where recruiting teams are being forced to be lean, that your recruiters are spending time on the things that they are uniquely and very good at, that couldn't be outsourced. And so the ROI case for us is always, we look at time to hire. So SquarePeg should immediately come in and help you, like time and application stage. You're going to get through all of your applicants right away. and how can we reduce time and stage, improve time to hire. But I think there's also this like quality of life metric that I don't know if we've captured well analytically, which is how much are your recruiters doing the things that they are good at and spending their day, doing what recruiters historically used to do, which is like closing top talent versus, spending time in manual work.
And just I mean, I absolutely agree, which is the promise of AI, but it's like, cool, you have an hour in your day not to call back candidates. Awesome. But Sam, you've seen a lot of employers, hopefully you can hear me, I switch audio sources.
Yep.
Try to fix this and fail, right? Like objectively fail. What are they getting wrong? Is that a technology issue? Is that a political issue? Is it some combination? Like why do these conversion initiatives sometimes fail?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a mix of those things, especially the bigger the company is, the more factors can come into play. I think a lot of times if a new leader comes in and they want to replace an existing stack, sometimes it's more important to like get their preferences in place and bring in a system that works somewhere else than like work with some of the things that have already been accomplished in that stack. We've seen that at the enterprise a few times, which has just kind of extended the length of like not having things figured out. So that we do see that as a reflex a lot of times, but there like might be a better way to do that. Just like first diagnose what you got and like see if you can like adapt to that new workflow or the new stack. We've just seen companies get really caught up in like change, as and that can be years. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of being really disciplined about the data. That's another thing. It's like very challenging, I think, to always follow the data and find the data and just go with that, because there's so many other factors at play. There's so much coming at you as a TA leader, especially the difference of things coming at you from the top C level and from underneath, from like the actual people talking to candidates, that you have a lot of pressure. And sometimes it's just very difficult to follow the data story because there's like, conflicting pressures coming from above and below. So I think that's also a challenge that we see and something that it's hard for TA leaders to kind of navigate within.
So just kind of going back to those metrics, when an organization does, again, fix this problem, can you break it down for me? Like what effects do I see downstream on sourcing? So like obviously you guys say once it's implemented, it's a very quick uptake. But what does that look like over the long term for you?
Yeah, over the long term, just like a decrease in unqualified candidate flow. That's like the biggest thing that people will see. If they increase conversion at the top of the funnel, which is where we play, you'll see like less inefficiency post apply. And then I think like if you also are like using the tools like Claire has or anything similar to that, you just like compound that and you'll get a ton more efficiency. But that's the main thing, is reduction in overall volume of disinterested candidate flow. And then in terms of dollars, you can save quite a bit of money on spend that you just don't need to spend anymore.
Awesome. The last one on this, but Claire, I'm curious because obviously we'll get into candidate experience a little bit more. There's so many touch points that a candidate has, assuming that they convert, right? Kind of across the candidate life cycle. Which of those generally tends to be the most important or significant touch point in terms of, that chemistry fit that you talked about?
It's really going to differ by industry and by job type. I think what we are seeing in 2026 is a move away from the generic motion of everybody goes through the same process, and an increase in personalization of workflows depending on job type, depending on industry. And so it is not that there's one touch point that is incredibly important. It's that the touch points that a candidate goes through are the ones that are necessary and relevant for the kind of jobs that they're doing. And so if you are an hourly worker in high volume, you should have a workflow that reflects the type of schedules you have, reflect, like allows you, for example, you might want to do an AI interview in the evening. And you might want to do that within an hour of applying to a job because you're, it's your whatever it is, in terms like the type of jobs that you're applying to, the type of schedule that you run, like you just need something incredibly personalized towards that. Whereas again, like you might have a senior AI engineer that's doing something very niche for a tech company. Now, in that case, like you might need a workflow where the minute that you are deemed qualified, that a person's calling you on the phone. And then you're going through sort of a sales pitch. And so what we've seen is like the tooling should allow for the personalization. In our world, it also accounts for fraud. So what we see a lot of is, for example, an employer might say, I want to see the people who are highly qualified, they're highly scored as being qualified, but there are a ton of fraud signals. And these people might not be real. Now they're going to go through a specific workflow that might say, okay, great, we're interested, but could you send me a video of yourself talking about a project and something that you built? Now that's for, likely fraud, but highly scored. Then what about like does not have fraud, but is highly scored? Maybe that's a human phone call. And then what about fraud, but low scored? Then maybe that's a different workflow. A human shouldn't have to do this, but like the TA's job is to be an orchestrator. You have to pick the tech that works for your industry and your job types. And you are orchestrating, you're saying, if I'm going to design workflows that are highly personalized to convert the best people for my industry and for this specific job type, what does it look like? And your tooling should meet you there. It should be able to take you through that level of personalization. And I think like AI interviews are controversial, for example. They're not for everybody, but they're definitely for certain types of jobs. And there are definitely some job categories where they prefer it. They prefer an AI interview that they can do at midnight, after work. And then there are certain jobs where you would never do that. Also, I would say like we have employers that ask candidates, hey, like, could you vibe code up a website and, show it to me as the next step in your application? Like that is only going to be a small fraction of a certain type of worker. But what matters is that worker now understands, okay, the employer is actually considering who I am and what this job is, and they're giving me a funnel that is super relevant to what I do and who I am. And I think that shows a level of engagement from the employer that's going to consistently reward quality of applicant at every stage because it's personalized versus this like just generic touch point.
Awesome. I almost asked you a question that I think like preempted this one. Is this something that can be done without technology? And if so, how would I start?
I mean, I would say no, not in today's world. Not in today's world. No, I think that, yeah, I mean, unless you are a type of company where the physical space is the most important thing, and like you're a shop and you want people to walk into your shop, and I would say for the majority of jobs, not using technology is just putting such a burden on everybody involved, the candidate, the recruiter. Everybody is just going to have to do a lot more work. And our goal is, the whole goal with AI is to get rid of all of the manual work that none of us want to be doing. So I would say for sure, technology is the most important thing. But the thing that's hard for TA teams is you've got this choice of, do I just work with my ATS and, Indeed or LinkedIn, like the behemoths, and do I just use everything that they have, the million modules that they have, and get stuck with an all-in-one that's not a great solution? Or do I go to the 3 million point solutions that are out there that are going to be excellent at the specific thing I need to do, but now I've got 45 tools that I'm using? I mean, I think that's and I do think that's all going to change. Like I think with, the API kind of driven economy, that is all going to change. But right now, that's the trouble. It's not like, do I use tech or do I not? It's, do I stick with the behemoth all-in-one that kind of sucks? Or do I go to the amazing point solutions, but have 47 tools and, different account managers and billing processes and all of that? And I think that's the really tough thing when you're thinking about it. So I would say technology has to be there to have a good experience, but weighing what technology you use and how well it all works together to build that comprehensive stack that is helpful and not annoying is the challenge.
Right.
Yeah, I
No,
mean, we see this all the time. But what Claire said is at the enterprise, that's one of these other pressure points where you might have like, it's just like a directive at the C-level in enterprise to consolidate and be more efficient and have fewer tools. And then you're stuck with this set of like big tools. Like that's how people end up with Workday recruiting, as their career site. It's not by choice. It happens to you. So I think that at the enterprise, that happens quite a bit. And there's so many point solutions. That's true. So it's really hard to make a decision. But one thing that like has not really changed despite all the new technology advances is that so many solutions in the market, like the big ones especially, force their clients to do a lot of work to get the tool up and running and to get value from it. And there's really just no excuse for that anymore. There's so much of the stuff should be like just configured and handed to you on a silver platter as the client. Shouldn't require like so much setup from you to get value. So I think that's the opportunity for the big players. Just like how much less work can you make your client do to get value from your tool, so that the technology can actually deliver and be used.
I think it's a huge indicator of like the quality of a company as well. If they force you into a very expensive long contract with no free trial and the implementation requires an implementation manager and it takes weeks to set up, like you're going to churn from that tool. It's just they're doing so many things to lock you in, and that's where their focus is versus delivering value first. I think hopefully in a world of abundance, yes, it's hard when you have this many tools to pick a tool because there's 700 competitors for every possible thing you could do. But like the nice thing is those competitors now have to show you value before they try to ask for your money, and they have to show you like what a smooth, streamlined process looks like. And I think that's, a win for the employers.
Awesome. So this is a technology problem. Go point solution, or else you're working with Taleo Business Edition. It sounds like, which is bad, right? No, still got market share weirdly. I want to ask one more question though on that topic. Then this is to you, Sam. So we talk about career sites, and I think a lot of people automatically put that in the employer brand world, which generally does tend to be not necessarily a technology solution. It's like design and AVP and all these other things. Is that missing the mark? Do you even need that stuff, or is it just really about UI, UX, and quick application?
I mean, yes, like we definitely see employer brand having a lot of influence and control over the career site technology, but they're very separate and different things. Like the employer brand content and the messaging is accessible in more places than just the career site. I think Marriott has done a really good job of this. They relaunched their employer brand, and of course it went on to a new career site, but it also went into so many other places. And that's where I think they get a lot of the value. The career site is just one channel for the employer brand. So I see employer brand as sort of a bigger operational piece than just the career site technology. Career site technology is just one of the channels of that brand. But primarily the career site has to be built to actually function technically and be easy. That should be the primary KPI of the career site. Like, what's my conversion? How am I getting people through my funnel? It shouldn't, I think, employers can make mistakes where they forcibly try to direct candidates through a path that they want them to go through, like see my content first, then get to jobs. That's really not always what the person wants. As where we focus high volume and in healthcare, people primarily want to know a few basic things before they even will consider learning more about you as a company. That's what, am I qualified? How much does it pay? And can I get there like locally, distance? Yeah. So those are the three big ones. Sometimes it's also the benefits. And then there's the story, there's the branding, there are those pieces to help me kind of get more interested, but we just don't see it going the other way, at least at high volume.
That makes sense. And not every company can be Marriott, because not every company has Chris Dunn, who I think registered as their CHRO. But no, they do a fantastic job. So I guess moving on to that, and I'm using assessments almost generally to mean stack ranking, matching candidates. And I think this is like one of the big topics that gets to me when we talk about automation, AI. Where do you draw the line between we want to get to know you and we're going to completely make this process as quick and painless as possible, right? Like, one of those pretty high touch, one of those pretty high tech. Like, where's the sweet spot there? Claire?
Yeah, I would say it's a hard world out there for the candidate, because they hear back from so few companies and they have to apply to so many jobs, that I think if you really want to build a talent acquisition function that is bringing in top candidates, you have to build a process that respects the candidate. And a ridiculously long application phase up front before you've given them anything is not wise. It's not going to bring in the best people. So if you are asking them a ton of screening questions up front, if you're asking them for a lot of work up front, if you're asking them to, the worst of all is to fill out a form when all that data is in their resume. If you are doing those things that create work and time for a candidate and they may not hear back from you, I think you're going to reduce quality from the gate. And so when you look at the way that assessments should work, it should always be an acknowledgement from the employer of what do we need at this stage that's the minimal amount for this stage. So we are big believers that for just an application, a candidate should just submit a resume, oftentimes maybe a knockout question or two, but it shouldn't be a lot, because then the employer has to do that triage and say, this is the world that SquarePeg lives in, but SquarePeg is, essentially going to tell you, okay, here's what your distribution curve looks like. Here's the people that are really qualified that you probably want to be talking to. And then you have some type of engagement that acknowledges that. And so you say, okay, great. Like, looks like, you have some really interesting experience. Here's the things that you have, you've set up all these hiring criteria. You've seen the candidates that match that. And then you can ask them for something. So they know that they are essentially at the next stage. And so a candidate who knows, okay, this job had 600 applicants. I'm in the final, 30 or 20 of these. And now they need to know a little bit more about me. So they're going to ask me this thing. That's okay, because the employer has reciprocated a little bit and said, okay, we're actually really interested and here's why. And then maybe the candidate does something else. At the very end of the funnel, it is normal for people to ask for, we see people ask for paid work samples all the time. Like, hey, I want you to actually do this job with me for 5 hours and we'll pay you for it before we hire you, or come in for a day. I mean, there's all types of things that you can see at the very end of the funnel that you want to do, especially when it comes to paid work hours or samples. But you can't do that for everybody. You can't make 600 people go through an AI interview or submit paid work or submit, all of these things. It has to be reciprocal. And so again, we get back to this idea of personalization. The employer needs to build a funnel that rewards people that are quality and shows something at every stage. And so it might be that you've had a recruiter call these people and say, like, we really like you and we really think that there's an opportunity here and here's why. Now we're going to ask you to do this next step. But they feel it's not a cold process, and you're not just trying to extract, you're trying to sort of give and show concern and show judgment before you ask for something. And so it's much more of a reciprocal relationship. And so I think assessments are fine. Any type of assessment, we see a lot of them. And for most of the jobs that we do see some type of assessment, but you don't apply that blanket to the entire funnel, where you're going to end up ghosting those people, because that'll just destroy your employer brand. I think you see it after a stage where you've had outreach and engagement from the recruiter or from the employer that suggests that you're in good hands as a candidate.
Sure. And I guess on that, does it matter? Does employer brand matter in a world in which I'm blasting resumes to companies that I'm not aware of and then forgetting that I applied in the first place?
Is a very good question. I think an employer brand should always matter. Yes, you might have a candidate robo applying, but an employer brand, like people accept jobs for lots of reasons other than the salary. Okay. If we were just to reduce a job down to compensation, it would be a very different application process than what you see today. But people care about learning opportunities, about mobility, about, a mission. There's all types of reasons that are not compensation why people apply. And in our case, we constantly see candidates not go for the top compensation offer. And so if you see that data and you know that it's true and you know that there are 10 to 15 things that a candidate cares about that are not compensation, the rest of that is all met with employer brand. And so it's all about why work for us when we're more than just a salary, or a wage. And so for sure, like your application experience the candidate's application experience should reflect the employer brand and who the employer is. You should get a flavor for what that employer is about during the application process. It's the best way to market to them. And so, yeah, I think it's incredibly important. And it gives you like a huge edge in recruiting. If people want to work for you for more than just the salary that you offer, it gives you a massive edge in attracting the best talent that your competitors might not be able to attract.
Gotcha. And Sam, do you see any correlation just between, I guess, the conversion rate, like where they're coming from, how they convert, and the type of experience they have? In other words, are employers kind of treating one source better than the other?
I don't know if they're treating like one source better than the other, but I mean, to support what Claire was saying, like we see this in the data that like there's a difference in conversion through to hire. Yeah, like people who are applying on external job boards, maybe never even visiting any material about the company, never hitting that career site, they're hired way less often. In terms of like an applicant hire ratio, that's consistent in all of our customer data. Candidates who apply, after visiting the career site, they're just hired way more often. And then there's like people who, are, sourced through referral or are internal transfers. Like then obviously it's like dramatically higher. But yeah, the data shows that if you see some of that content, you hit the company's own site, they're way more likely to hire you, or you're way more likely to be interested in them. Like it's hard to say which way it goes. Yeah.
100%. So I just kind of want to look forward into the future. Like obviously let's take the economy out of it because that's sort of unpredictable. But Claire, like let's say 18 months, 24 months from now, is this a problem do you see getting better or getting worse, assuming they don't buy either of your products? And what's the scenario where the conversion and signal to noise problem gets fixed at scale?
Yeah, it's a really interesting problem. I think right now it's pretty bad out there. Like maybe it can get a little bit worse. It probably will in the short term, but I'm super bullish and optimistic about the long term. And so, we work with a lot of tech companies, so sometimes they experience things a little bit earlier. But what you see is right now, sort of the AI slop wars, like both sides, robo apply, fraud, keyword stuffed resumes, AI candidates, all of these things inundating the ATS on the candidate side, and then employers using all of these, tools to try to combat that, and then candidates find other tools to work around. So I think we are in this world of lots of noise. But where do I think this is going? Ultimately, is when you look at a lot of the AI tooling out there, what it's really good at is like deep research, analysis, finding signal. And I think the world that we're going to is going to be, you have an always on sourcer that's driving people to your career page where they can learn about you, or at least to some type of thing where they can understand, why is your company different from every other company out there? So you have kind of always on sourcers, always on screeners, always on applicant evaluators, and you have a group of incredibly talented recruiters that can get on the phone and convince candidates about why this job. And so you get to a world where recruiters are doing something awesome that they love, and you've got these tools that are just constantly working and always on for you. And then on the candidate side, like, you're being approached about, things that would be a high fit for you. And if you're applying to jobs, you're immediately getting feedback. Yes, no, you're not getting ghosted anymore. And so as a candidate, even if you are using a robo apply tool, like, you're getting sourced by companies that would be a fit, and the companies that you're applying to, you're getting feedback right away on, did you make it or not, and why? And so I think ultimately, like, what everybody gets is less, um, less of this, like, haze of I've just got to keep, like, brute forcing it through, and more of, like, a curated process. And I think that the future is definitely going there, where you just have these always on systems for both employers and candidates. And you have this kind of digital handshake in the middle that is all about curation and relevance. And that kind of benefits us, and we get to stick to more of our human tasks. So I'm bullish about the future.
Awesome. Sam, this is kind of last question before we wrap up. So one of the coolest things I think right now is companies are sort of reinventing the talent acquisition function. Let's say I was designing everything top of funnel. I was optimizing my organization for conversion. Excuse me, I was building my organization for conversion, not optimizing for it. What does that look like? And have you seen any companies do that successfully?
I have not seen anyone do that, like, as their priority to build a new system. But if I was going to build a new TA tech stack from scratch and optimize it for conversion, I think I would start by doing everything from the point of view of a phone in my hand, like literally holding a phone in my hand, and think about the experience of the type of person you're trying to hire. What are they doing day to day? Where might they be interested in, like, looking at your jobs? Are they at work? Are they at home? And design the experience both functionally and the content from that perspective, like truly try to, like, be in their world. That's where I would begin. And I would look at the technology that makes it as easy as possible for the type of candidate you're hiring to connect with you, to, show interest in what you're doing, and to apply to jobs, whatever it might be, but make it really easy. I think the misconception, there's a big misconception that if you make it easier, you'll get a lot more unqualified, a lot more volume. But we've seen over and over and over again that is absolutely not true. It's the channel. If it's really easy on Indeed to apply without ever understanding anything about the company, then yeah, like, maybe it's too easy. And that kind of volume can hurt you. But on your career site, those people are already there. They already found you. They're interested. Make it easy for those people to get into your world. So if I was building from the ground up, like, use Dahlia 100%, like, no brainer. But
Obviously,
yes, in terms of ATS and all the rest, like, prioritize things that make the candidate life easier, but also make your life easier as an operator. What are the solutions I can put in place where I don't have to do an incredible amount of work to set it up and get value from it quickly?
right. So taking it home, the 2 minutes we have left, in conversations with both of you as well as the rehearsal, I think these were kind of the themes that we extracted on actionable stuff that organizations do right now. The first is looking at speed to first contact as a measurement, and not time to fill, cost per hire, because that clock starts, and speed is such an important variable when it comes to improving candidate experience. Assign accountability to recruiters for the conversion metric, because if nobody owns it, nobody can be held accountable for it, right? And then also the business case. And this is one I think I've talked to you both about that's really important. Candidate experience matters, but it's a really hard thing to sell to a CFO. So frame it in sourcing ROI, because that's the conversation that gets budget and leadership attention, rather than the more amorphous kind of touchy-feely stuff. Although that is important, you first have to make the business case for, I would say, the bigger business problem. Again, speed, clarity, generally tend to convert the highest. We'll talk about that. And finally, there are tools out there that are not Indeed, by the way. They are not LinkedIn Recruiter, but inbound, if done right, can be a very, very cost-effective way to get candidates, get your pipeline filled, and potentially get customers. And like the bottom line, right? More people who are aware of your brand, the more potential consumers you have, which is something that even sales loves to hear. So with that, I'd like to thank our two sponsors, Dahlia and SquarePeg. Sam, you have any final thoughts?
Come check us out. Shoot me an email, sam@dahlia.co. I always love to talk shop, even if it's not just about Dahlia. So happy to help out if I can for anyone who's interested.
And knows more about the job board space and their chicanery than anyone in the industry, I would say. So if you need help with that, Sam's your man. Claire, take us home.
Yeah, I think same here. I don't know if anybody has questions from the audience, but happy to, we live in a very, I don't know, AI centric world where we're constantly studying what tools are working, what is not, and how the market is changing. So Claire at squarepeg.ai, we're happy to talk to anybody about this.
Awesome. And with that, I am Matt at mattcharney.com, but unless you want a snarky answer, I don't really know all that much. So we'll keep this open for a second for questions if we can, but that brings us to the top of the hour. Everyone who is on here or registered will receive a recording directly along with the deck. So thank you very much. And we'll be back with another one of these next month. So tune in and hopefully we can keep the momentum going. So thank you very much. And thank you, Sam. And thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks. Yeah. Great talking to you all.
Bye.